Okay, let's go ahead and try this warm-up. Try it by yourself and then put me back on play so that we can go through it together. The members of the senior class are planning a dance. They use the equation R is equal to P times N to determine the total receipts. What is N expressed in terms of P and R? So really what we're doing is we're solving for N. We're getting N by itself. The inverse of multiplying by P would be to divide by P. If you do it to one term, you have to do it to all terms. I'm going to put my N on the left side. So N is equal to R divided by P. So the answer is choice 4. (8.3) Multiplying binomials. I'm going to actually show you guys two different ways to multiply binomials. The first method, which is using a table, actually gives you a visual, and many kids, when they first look at this concept of multiplying two binomials, this makes a little more sense to them. It's more creative. Sometimes kids like to use this better, but it's definitely more time consuming. The second method I'm going to show you is the distributive property, which you guys are well aware of, but we're going to now do it with two binomials versus a binomial and what you're used to, which would be a monomial. If they ask you to build a table, which sometimes they will and sometimes they won't, if they don't ask you, then you get to pick whichever method you want to use. If they ask you to build a table, you're going to literally build a rectangle, and we're going to break it into a table. Nothing has to really necessarily be equal at all. You're going to take 2x plus 4 and let it be either the horizontal part or represent the vertical. It really doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go ahead and let it be the horizontal, which means 3x minus 7 has to be the vertical. And it's minus 7, so make sure you put negative 7. Now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply to find each one of the areas of these smaller rectangles to make up the bigger one. And remember, the area of a rectangle is length times width. So 3x times 2x would be 6x squared. Don't forget to add exponents when you multiply. Go down to the bottom left rectangle. It's a negative 7 by 2x. So 2x times negative 7 is negative 14x. Top right rectangle is a 3x by 4. Length times width would be 3x times 4, which would be 12x. And then the bottom right rectangle is negative 7 by 4. When you multiply it, you get negative 28. Now go ahead and observe the fact that out of the 4 areas that make up the smaller rectangles, the 12x and the negative 14x are like terms. So therefore, the product of it is 6x squared. You're going to add up all of your little rectangles to get the total. 6x squared is by itself, and we have 12x minus 14x, or plus a negative, would be negative 2x, and then minus 28. So if you were to multiply these two binomials using a table, or either method, you're going to end up with this solution. It's a trinomial, and it's quadratic because it's got a squared on it. The distributive property, you guys are used to seeing a binomial multiplied by a monomial, like this, for example. However, they're not just making it a monomial now, they're making it into a binomial. So instead of now just multiplying the 4 through that you were used to, you now have to multiply the 4 through and you have to multiply the 2x through. So really all you guys are doing is the distributive property twice. So if I start with the 2x, I have to multiply the 2x by the 3x, which is 6x squared, the 2x by the negative 7, which is negative 14x, then multiply the 4 by the 3x, which is 12x, and the 4 by the negative 7, which is negative 28. Notice again, out of the 4 terms, your two middle terms are like terms because they have the same variable to the same power. So keeping it in simplest form, we're going to combine them, and we're going to come up with the same answer we did with a different method. Okay, so here's the table method. Here's actually just using the distributive property twice. Really, both methods work. The table actually takes, I think it's a little more creative, a little bit longer. especially if you're multiplying polynomials that are bigger than binomials. But the one that most kids use throughout high school and into college is just the distributive property. They don't usually spend the time building the table. All right, let's try this one, and we're going to go ahead and use the distributive property by directions. So guys, go ahead and put me on pause, try it by yourself, and then resume so we can see if you did it correct. Okay, go ahead. All right, hopefully you have put me back on resume now, and let's go ahead and multiply first x, which is really a 1x times a 4x, which is 4x squared. Then multiply your 1x by your 3, which is 3x. And now you're going to go ahead and multiply your negative 6. Be careful because it's a negative 6 by 4x, which is negative 24x. And then negative 6 by 3 is negative 18. Notice again that we have like terms. We have positive 3x and negative 24x. Combining our like terms, we end up with 4x squared minus 21x minus 18 would be my final answer, which is a trinomial, 1, 2, 3 terms in standard form because it goes from the highest exponent to the least, and it's a quadratic expression because it's squared. All right, go ahead and try doing this one as a table now. Please pause me, do it yourself, and then resume to see how you did with it. Okay, go ahead and hit pause. Now, you may have decided to put the x minus 3 on, horizontally or vertically. Like I said, it really doesn't matter where you put it. We'll still come up with the same answer. Understand that the 3 is a negative, and the negative 5 minus 5 means negative. So let's go ahead and find the area of each of the 4 littler rectangles. This one is a 4x by x, which gives me 4x squared. This one is a 4x by negative 3, which gives me negative 12x. Length times width would be negative 5 times x. Length times width would be negative 5 times negative 3 is positive 15. Notice that the negative 12x and the negative 5x are like terms, so we can now combine those. 4x squared is the largest exponent. Negative 12x plus negative 5x is negative 17x, and 15, whoops, yep, nope, that's right, plus 15. Thought I made a mistake. Okay. All right, now you're going to learn about, you may have already learned about this, but the word FOIL. FOIL is actually a word that a math person had made up, I don't know how long ago, but I've known it ever since I was in school. It stands for first, outer, inner, last. It's really doing the distributive property, except for it's in a particular order. So you have to understand that first is talking about 2 particular terms, outer, inner, and last. You want to make sure that you understand what FOIL means, whether you use the word or you don't, but you're going to hear a lot of math teachers and professors use that term, so you want to be able to identify what they're talking about. First means that if you look at the 2 binomials when you're multiplying, you are going to multiply the first number of the binomial of the first number of the second binomial. So you're going to multiply these 2. Those are the first. 5x times 2x is 10x squared. Then outers means that if you look at all 4 of these terms, kind of ignoring the parentheses, you would notice that 5x and 1 are on the outside of the 4 terms, so these guys are called the outers. 5x times 1 would give me 5x. Then we have the inners. The inners, if these guys are on the outside, then these guys would be on the inside. And negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. Last, remember, if 5x and 2x were the first two in each binomial, then 3 and 1 must be the last two numbers. So negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. So it goes first, outers, inners, and last. And it stands for FOIL. Okay? Once you multiply that out, combine your outers and your inners, your like terms, you're going to end up with 10x squared minus 1x, which we leave the imaginary 1 out, minus 3. Please understand that FOIL really is the distributive property, just doing it twice, in a particular order. Okay, so what we were doing in the first couple screens with distributive property really is the same thing. We were just forced into doing the first, the outer, the inner, then the last, to try to help us remember by thinking the word FOIL. Okay, so that's FOIL. All right, this one, I'm going to tell you how to do it, and then put me on pause and see if you can go ahead and do it. Okay, and then you can resume. Listen, realize that this is a trinomial and this is a binomial. So we don't use FOIL, which is what we just talked about. FOIL is really only meant for binomials times binomials. But regardless of that, we're still doing the distributive property. In this situation, you have to multiply 3x squared times each of these. Then you have to multiply the x times each of these. And then the negative 5 times each of these. Okay? So that means you're going to do distributive property 3 times because you have 3 terms to multiply through. All right, so go ahead and put me on pause and do the distributive property. At the end of that, make sure you identify and then combine like terms. Okay, go ahead, put me on pause. All right, so you're going to do 3x squared. I'm going to multiply my 3x squared times my first term. 3x squared times 2x is 6x to the third. Don't forget, you add your exponents on those like bases. Then multiply the 3x squared times the negative 7, which would be negative 21x squared. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply my x. X times 2x is 2x squared. And then x times negative 7 is negative 7x. So I took care of my first term, my second term, now I'm going to go to my third term. Negative 5 times 2x is negative 10x, and negative 5 times negative 7 is positive 35. Once you have fully multiplied it all the way through by doing the distributive property, you're going to identify like terms. Negative 21x squared and positive 21x squared are like terms. We have negative 7x and negative 10x are like terms. The other two are singled out as 6x to the third. Negative 21x squared and 2x squared is negative 19x squared. Gone, gone, gone. Negative 7x minus 10x is negative 17x. Gone and gone. Plus 35 drops down. And that's my answer. We have to call this one a polynomial, and the reason why is because it's got 4 terms in it. We don't have any specific name above trinomial, and we can say that it is, because the highest power is 3, it's cubic. Okay, so that sums up 8.3, and we should be all set for our actual problems that we have to work out.